Intro: 20 stars who lived as someone else. What if I told you that some of Hollywood's most iconic stars never truly lived as themselves? Behind the flawless smiles, the carefully lit close-ups, and the meticulously constructed personas, there were fractured identities, actors and actresses who spent their entire careers, and in some cases their entire lives, performing a role far more complex than any script ever offered. They weren't just acting on screen, they were acting every waking moment. In an industry obsessed with image, perfection, and control, many stars were forced or chose to live under assumed names, deny their origins, conceal their desires, or mask their true selves behind studio-forged facades. They became legends, but at the cost of their authenticity. You may know them as Monroe, Grant, Hudson, or Garbo. But behind those names were hidden stories of reinvention, repression, and survival. Some altered their appearances, others rewrote their heritage. A few disappeared entirely the moment the camera stopped rolling. All of them were playing the ultimate role, the one Hollywood demanded. So tonight, we're peeling back the glamour and unmasking the truth. These are 20 stars who lived as someone else, not just for a scene or a season, but for a lifetime. Which of these stories will make you question what was real and what was performance? 1. Norma Jean Mortensen, the woman behind Marilyn Monroe. Before the platinum curls, the red lips, and the breathy voice, there was Norma Jean, a girl with no father, a troubled mother, and a camera-ready smile that hid years of instability. She was never supposed to become Marilyn. Marilyn was invented piece by piece by studio executives, stylists, and publicists who erased her past like it was bad lighting. They bleached her hair, reshaped her nose, taught her how to walk, talk, flirt, and giggle on command. Norma Jean didn't disappear overnight. She was slowly smothered until only Marilyn remained. The world fell in love with the fantasy, but few noticed the woman cracking beneath the image. She tried to reclaim her voice through serious roles, production power, and confessional interviews. But every attempt to be real was met with ridicule or rejection. She belonged to the myth, not to herself. When she died in 1962, headlines mourned the star. But Norma Jean had already been gone for years. Was Marilyn Monroe a persona she controlled or a prison she couldn't escape? 2. Cary Grant, reinvented by charm, haunted by silence. Archibald Leach never fit Hollywood's idea of a leading man. Born into poverty in Bristol, England, his early life was shaped by loss and lies. His mother institutionalized, his father absent, his identity fragmented. But when he crossed the Atlantic, he shed everything. His name, his accent, even his posture. He didn't just become Cary Grant, he created him. The transformation was so complete that even Grant once admitted, "Everyone wants to be Cary Grant. Even I want to be Cary Grant." But behind the charisma and clipped vowels was a man riddled with insecurity, dependence on LSD therapy, and a relentless pursuit of approval. Studios loved him, audiences adored him, but friends described him as remote, contradictory, and unknowable. It wasn't just about hiding where he came from, it was about constructing a self so polished, so controlled, he no longer knew what was underneath. Can a man truly vanish behind the perfect version of himself? 3. Rock Hudson, the double life of a Hollywood heartthrob. He was the image of masculine perfection, tall, broad, shouldered, soft, spoken but strong. Rock Hudson was everything 1,950 seconds America wanted in a man, and everything he was told he couldn't be. Born Roy Harold Scherer Jr., he was a shy, stuttering mechanic's son with dreams too big for his background. But when he entered Hollywood, he was given a new name, a new story, and strict instructions: never reveal the truth. His studio arranged fake dates, orchestrated a sham marriage, and built a public life around the illusion of heterosexual domesticity. Off-screen, he lived cautiously, quietly falling in love in shadows, attending parties where cameras weren't allowed. When he was diagnosed with AIDS in the 1,980 seconds, it shattered the illusion. America mourned the loss of a symbol, but also reeled from the truth. They had never truly known him. Did Rock Hudson's fame protect him or erase him? 4. Hedy Lamarr, the inventor behind the bombshell. She was called the most beautiful woman in the world, a screen siren whose face launched 1,000 fantasies. But Hedy Lamarr was more than her looks, and that was precisely the problem. Hollywood only wanted her body. The rest, they tried to silence. Born Hedwig Kiesler in Austria, she had fled a controlling marriage and a continent on the brink of war. In America, she became Hedy Lamarr, a glamorized name, a glamorized image, Behind the scenes, she worked on frequency-hopping radio signals, a foundational concept for Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. Studios laughed. Producers dismissed her technical sketches as vanity projects. While men played scientists on screen, Hetty was one in real life working by lamplight after long days of being objectified. She died without proper credit, without patents, without royalties. Hollywood celebrated the icon, but buried the intellect. How many geniuses have we overlooked because they wore lipstick? 5. Rita Hayworth, the manufactured goddess. Rita Hayworth didn't exist, not in the beginning. She was born Margarita Carmen Cancino, the daughter of Spanish dancers, her face shaped by her heritage. But to the studios, that heritage was a liability. They raised her hairline with electrolysis, dyed her hair auburn, changed her name. Latin became all American. The public never knew. To them, she was perfection, the love goddess. But the transformation came with a cost. Rita once said, "Men go to bed with Gilda, but they wake up with me." That wasn't just bitterness, it was grief. She had become someone else to be loved, only to find herself forever unloved for who she really was. Behind the sultry poses and choreographed interviews was a woman slowly fading from her own story. If you're loved only for your illusion, were you ever truly seen? 6. Merle Oberon, the actress who erased her origin. Merle Oberon rose through British and American cinema as a delicate beauty with an exotic appeal, but never so exotic as to challenge her whiteness. That was by design. She was born Estelle Merle O'Brien Thompson in Bombay, India, to a Sri Lankan mother. But that truth would have ended her career before it began. So she claimed Tasmania, invented a new past, hid her mother as a maid. Photographers were instructed never to shoot her in natural light. She built an empire on shadow. Her success was not just acting, it was active erasure. She had to vanish her own roots to be accepted. Even decades later, when asked about her background, she deflected with icy precision. Her secret died with her, or so she thought. How many careers in Hollywood were bought with silence, and how many identities were lost in the trade? 7. Montgomery Clift, the torn self beneath the idol. He was the new kind of leading man, sensitive, introspective, raw. Montgomery Clift didn't embody masculinity the way Bogart or Gable did. He redefined it. But his truth was something the world wasn't ready to accept. Privately, he loved men. Publicly, he dated women for the cameras. The conflict tore at him. Friends said he lived like a house with the lights off, wandering between fame and inner fracture. After a car crash in 1956, his already fragile psyche shattered further. His beautiful face was damaged, but what haunted him more was the loss of control over his image. He kept working haunted eyes, slurred lines, emotional implosions. No longer just acting on screen, Clift had become a living ghost. He was still playing the role of Montgomery Clift long after the man had stopped existing. How much of him was real, and how much was the projection we demanded? 8. Kim Novak, the studio's shadow experiment. She was meant to be the next Grace Kelly, blonde, ethereal, silent enough to shape. But Kim Novak wasn't a copy. She was complex, insecure, rebellious, and determined not to be controlled. Columbia Pictures had other plans. They micromanaged everything: her voice, her posture, her lovers. They resented her real-life relationships, especially with Sammy Davis Jr., a black entertainer. At a time when interracial romance was taboo and career-ending, they applied pressure, threats, silence. In Vertigo, she played a woman forced to transform into someone else for a man's obsession. The role wasn't fiction, it was prophecy. Kim Novak was transformed, erased, repackaged, both on screen and off. She withdrew from Hollywood not because she failed, but because she refused to become an echo of someone she never was. What if the most haunting performance in film history was actually autobiographical? 9. Jean Arthur, the woman who disappeared. She had one of the most distinct voices in classic Hollywood, a husky, anxious charm that felt both rehearsed and deeply human. But Jean Arthur hated fame, hated attention, hated the idea of being known at all. She was dubbed the Greta Garbo of the talkies, but even that was too much. After her final film, she simply vanished. No interviews, no parties, no retrospectives. She taught acting under a different name. Students didn't know who she was. She was reportedly terrified of being photographed, of being seen, of losing the thin veil between public and private. But even at her peak, there was always distance. The woman who made America laugh in screwball comedies was off-screen, paralyzed by her own visibility. Did Jean Arthur quit Hollywood, or did she finally reclaim herself? 10. Peter Lorre, The fugitive in plain sight. To American audiences, Peter Lorre was the ultimate villain, sinister eyes, a whispering voice, a presence that made skin crawl. But long before he terrified moviegoers, he was a man on the run. Born Laszlo Lowenstein in Austria-Hungary, Jewish by heritage and artistic by nature, he escaped the Nazis under a cloud of fear. He used fake passports, changed his name, reinvented his accent. When he finally arrived in Hollywood, he carried more than a suitcase. He carried trauma disguised as performance. The roles he took were echoes of what he fled: murderers, spies, madmen. It wasn't method acting, it was survival reimagined. Off-screen, he remained isolated, addicted to morphine, and unable to truly belong. He was never fully of Hollywood. He was always slightly apart, a man who lived in someone else's skin, even in safety. When you flee for your life, do you ever stop pretending to be someone else? 1. Sal Mineo, the love he couldn't speak. He was just a teenager when Rebel Without a Cause made him famous. But Sal Mineo wasn't James Dean's echo. He was something more fragile, more dangerous for the era. A queer star in a time of censorship. Mineo never publicly came out. Couldn't. Studios wouldn't allow it, and society wouldn't tolerate it. He played tough guys, soldiers, straight roles. Meanwhile, in private, he lived a careful half-life, falling in love undercover, fearing exposure at every turn. His career dimmed as he aged, not because of talent, but because the parts stopped coming when he refused to fake it anymore. He was working on a comeback, an honest one, when he was murdered in 1976, stabbed in an alley behind his home. The press focused on the scandal. They missed the tragedy. If love is the most human thing we have, what does it mean to hide it your whole life? 12. Anna May Wong, the star America wouldn't let shine. She was the first Chinese-American movie star, but Anna May Wong never got to be the heroine. Not really. She was born in Los Angeles, fluent in English, elegant in every sense, but Hollywood cast her as the seductress, the servant, the sinister other. When the lead role in The Good Earth, a Chinese character, went to a white actress in yellowface, Wong didn't protest. She was exhausted. She had spent a lifetime playing versions of herself that weren't allowed to be real. She left for Europe, where she was celebrated, but America remained unchanged. Even when she returned, the roles were limited, the ceiling unmoved. She died without ever playing the lead she deserved, because the country of her birth wouldn't allow her to be American on screen. What happens when your identity is so visible, yet always written by someone else? 13. Dolores Del Rio, the beauty Hollywood kept at a distance. She was one of the first Latina stars to conquer Hollywood. Dolores Del Rio, with eyes like poetry and elegance that rivaled any leading lady of the era. But success didn't mean belonging. Born in Mexico, she brought her heritage with her until the studios asked her to leave it at the door. She was cast as exotic queens, sultry temptresses, women meant to decorate but never lead. Even when her talent eclipsed her peers, she was rarely granted central, complex roles. She was elegant enough for the gowns, too, foreign for the fairy tale endings. When her fame faded in Hollywood, she returned to Mexico and became a legend in her own right. But the message was clear. To rise in Hollywood, she had to erase part of herself, and even then, she was never truly let in. If the door is open only partway, how long before you walk away entirely? 14. Anthony Perkins, the actor trapped in his own closet. To the world, he was Norman Bates' fragile, twitchy, unforgettable. But Anthony Perkins was more than his most famous role. He was also a man constantly hiding the most human part of himself. Quietly gay in a time when being so was career suicide, he lived with deep contradictions. He dated women in public, built an image of awkward bachelorhood, and even married a woman later in life, possibly out of fear, possibly for protection. Throughout it all, his true self remained locked away. He had long-term relationships with men, including actor Tab Hunter, but rarely spoke of them. His performances always seemed haunted because they were. Perkins wasn't just playing repression, he was living it. He died in 1992, just as Hollywood began inching toward honesty. Too late for him, too early for so many others. When the performance is self-erasure, does applause feel like punishment? 15. Greta Garbo, the woman who chose silence. She was the embodiment of mystery. Greta Garbo arrived from Sweden and immediately commanded the screen icy, distant, magnetic. But the image wasn't just a studio creation, it was a shield. She rarely gave interviews, never attended premieres, avoided the press like disease. After just a handful of years at the top, she walked away from Hollywood altogether. She didn't announce retirement, she just vanished. For decades, she lived in New York, taking long walks alone, never commenting on her past. Rumors swirled about her lovers, her private life, her politics, but she never confirmed nor denied. Her most famous line, "I want to be alone," wasn't a catchphrase, it was a philosophy. Garbo didn't want to live as someone else. She didn't want to be seen at all. Was she protecting herself or denying the world the truth it didn't deserve? 16. George Sanders, the final role, he wrote himself. He built a career playing charming scoundrels, eloquent villains, and cultured cynics. George Sanders was the voice of smooth disdain, a man who always seemed in control, even when he wasn't. Behind the scenes, he was plagued by depression, detachment, and a growing sense that the world no longer had a place for him. As his roles declined, so did his sense of self. He had outlived the version of himself that Hollywood had made famous. In 1972, he checked into a hotel in Barcelona, wrote a suicide note that read, "Dear world, I am leaving because I am bored," and overdosed on barbiturates. The message was delivered with his trademark dryness, but the pain beneath it was unmistakable. Even in death, Sanders performed. His final act was in character, but perhaps that was the problem. He had played the role too long to ever find the man beneath. What happens when the performance doesn't end because the actor never stopped pretending? 17. John Gilbert, silenced by sound. In the silent era, John Gilbert was royalty. Handsome, passionate, the very idea of romance in motion. But when sound arrived, his kingdom fell not because of his voice, but because of how studios rewrote the narrative. Rumors spread that his voice was high, unmanly, unsuitable for talkies. In truth, his voice was fine, but studio politics, feuds with Louis B. Mayer, and a refusal to play by MGM's rules led to his decline. He became a victim, not of sound, but of sabotage. Unable to reclaim his place, he spiraled into alcoholism, obscurity, and heart failure by age 36. The man who had once whispered love on screen died unheard. Hollywood didn't just take his spotlight, it took his identity. When a lie is repeated loudly enough, does it become the truth even to the one being lied about? 18. Elizabeth Taylor, the goddess and the caged woman. She was Hollywood's eternal jewel, lavender eyes, diamonds, scandals, and husbands. But Elizabeth Taylor was not just the icon. She was also a woman constantly trying to step outside the myth that enveloped her. From the age of 10, she was packaged. Every relationship, every illness, every indulgence became tabloid fuel. As the media fed on her image, she tried to define herself through activism, through love, through anger. But the world always preferred the character Liz, not Elizabeth. She once said, "I've been through it all, baby. I'm Mother Courage." Behind the melodrama was a survivor who never fully got to be ordinary. She played the role of Elizabeth Taylor so well that no one ever asked what it cost her. If everyone wants a piece of you, is there ever anything left for yourself? 19. Judy Holliday, too smart to be safe. She played ditzy blonde so convincingly that audiences assumed the act was real. But Judy Holliday was hiding something in plain sight, a razor-sharp mind that terrified the men around her. Her IQ reportedly measured at 172. She read voraciously, wrote essays, debated politics. But studios warned her not to show it, not to threaten her male co-stars, not to break the illusion. So she smiled, flubbed lines, played dumb. And the world laughed along. When she testified during the McCarthy hearings, she answered every question with deliberate confusion, dodging blacklisting by playing the very role they expected from her. It was brilliant theater and heartbreaking strategy. She lived inside a character she created, because the real Judy was deemed too dangerous. When intelligence becomes a threat, how much must you pretend just to be allowed to exist? 20. Marlon Brando, the man of 100 masks. He was the rebel, the sex symbol, the genius, the recluse. Marlon Brando wore more masks than most actors dared to try, and perhaps that was the point. He detested fame yet chased it, craved privacy yet delivered unforgettable performances. He ridiculed the industry but stayed within it. His sexuality, his politics, his persona, they shifted like shadows, unpredictable and unapologetic. Brando once said, "Acting is lying for a living." But no one lied with more conviction or more pain. Was he hiding from the world or from himself? Those closest to him never quite knew. He was adored, feared, misunderstood, because he never gave the world a final version of who he was. Only fragments, only masks. If you change your face enough times, does the original even exist anymore? Bonus: Gary Cooper, the man who left the room before you entered. To many, Gary Cooper was the embodiment of stoic masculinity. Tall, reserved, honorable. He didn't speak much, didn't emote much, and never gave interviews that revealed anything beyond the surface. But beneath the silence was elaborate. Born Frank James Cooper, he adopted Gary at the studio's suggestion, a harder, cleaner name. But that was only the beginning. As his fame grew, he began removing parts of himself. Political views, personal desires, doubts, grief, they were carefully locked away. He didn't just avoid vulnerability, he erased it. His public persona was so controlled that even those closest to him described him as unknowable. He had affairs, yes, but friends questioned if anyone truly knew what he wanted, or feared, or loved. It was as if he'd walked out of the room before you ever got there, leaving only the shadow of a man behind. He lived as the ultimate American hero on screen, but in real life, he may have been playing the longest, most impenetrable role in Hollywood. What if someone wears the mask so well, so long, that it stops being a mask and becomes the only face they have? They were legends, yes, but also illusions. In a town built on fiction, these stars paid the price of survival by living lives that were never fully theirs. Some chose the mask, others had it forced upon them, and in the end, most were remembered not for who they were, but for the roles they were told to play. Behind every name was a hidden face. Behind every performance, a private war. So tell us, which of these stories felt like freedom and which felt like captivity? Was there one star you think truly escaped the role they were forced to live? Leave your thoughts below. And if you want more stories from the other side of the curtain, subscribe, share, stay curious.